Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us. This is Paige Hancock, Marketing Manager at Spok, and I'll be your moderator for today's webinar. Today, we'll be talking about the risks of delaying your move to next-generation 911 technology. Lee Boakst, Regional VP of Government Sales at Spok, will share the difference that NG9-1-1 can make in the safety of your community and his insights on the status of NG9-1-1 in the U.S. today. Before we get started, I would like to go over some housekeeping items. Everyone will be muted during today's webinar, but we still want your participation. Please submit your questions via the questions box in the GoToWebinar toolbar, and then Lee will answer as many questions as time allows after the presentation. A recording of this webinar and the presentation slides will be sent to all registrants tomorrow, and please feel free to share these with others at your organization. You'll also have the opportunity to complete an evaluation at the end of the webinar. We would love it if you could take a couple of minutes to complete this survey. We truly take your feedback into account, and your thoughts help our efforts to provide relevant and informative presentations. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Lee, who will begin our presentation.
Thank you very, very much, Paige. And I want to thank everybody on the call for taking their valuable time today to discuss this very important topic. So, our agenda today, we will look at a progress report of the state of NG9-1-1 today. We're going to talk about those 4 risks of delaying your move to NG9-1-1. And then we can kind of talk about preparing for your particular municipalities, counties, or states move to NG9-1-1 and what that might look like. But before we get to the NG9-1-1 piece, sometimes it's good to take a look back at the history and kind of where we've been. And so back in 1968, that first 911 call was placed. Now in those early days, very little information was relayed to the dispatcher or call taker. You are where you told the 911 dispatcher you are. And so as we moved into the 1970s, we figured out, well, that might not be as good a solution as we can come up with, and we came up with Enhanced 911. We created the anti-alley databases, and that linked a phone number to a location, and you are where your billing address is. And we progressed with Enhanced 911 for quite a while. We got all the way into the 1990s, where wireless phones overtook the landlines as the most popular devices across the U.S. This is also when 911 was officially made the universal emergency number in the U.S. by the Wireless Communications and Public Safety Act of 1999. We continue to progress into the 2000s, and the FCC requires all wireless and VoIP providers to offer 911 services to all the consumers. You are now where the nearest cell phone tower is as you make those wireless cell phone calls. As we emerge into the 2010s and current date, we've developed through NENA and other organizations the NG9-1-1 requirements, I3. So when we look at the situation we were in versus the situation that we're looking to go to, here's a thumbnail of how these requirements are evolving. So today, PSAPs get caller location from that public alley database. This database must be kept current prior to any 911 calls taking place from that location, or else the location information is inaccurate. Calls are then routed to the appropriate answering point based on the incoming caller ID, which is associated with the correct PSAP for that location. And then with Enhanced 911, only voice calls to 911 are supported. But as we all know, voice calls are not even the most favored method of communication anymore. Text is much more preferred. You're looking at the next generation 911. We see that location information for both IP and non-IP phones will be stored in a location information server, or LIS. And then there's PBX environments that are popular in larger organizations. The verified caller location data will be stored on site somewhere in a database that will be accessible. And a major industry change is more of a cultural change than anything else. That of the expectation that people may also communicate with 911 centers via text, and they would like the ability to send photos or even a video. So what is the state of NG9-1-1 today? Let's take a look at that state by state. So only 5% of the 6,500 PSAPs in the U.S. currently have text to 911 capabilities. As of 2015, the National 911 Program Progress Report, only 6 states have reported in that their NG9-1-1 systems are fully operational. 8 states have reported that their NG9-1-1 system is somewhere between 1 and 80% operational. And the remainder of the states either reported having no functionality or haven't reported in. So it's obvious there's a gap between the understanding that we need NG9-1-1 across the nation and the actual adoption of this technology at the state, local, and municipality level. So I'm going to stop a minute and we're going to take a live poll. So where is your organization in the process of implementing NG9-1-1? We'd love to hear from you. Are you fully implemented, partially implemented, not yet implemented, but have a documented plan? Or are you currently in that planning process right now? Or do you just not know where you are in the process at the moment? Please take a minute and go ahead and check one of the selections. So as we look through the poll results, looks like half of you are partially implemented, and about a quarter of you are in the planning process, and a quarter of you don't know exactly where that process is at the moment. So thank you for participating in the poll. So what are some of the challenges that we have in adopting this new next generation 911 technology? One of the most common reasons we find when consulting with different PSAPs around the country is the difficulty in finding funding for the project. Now today, much of the funding for 911 is through taxes and fees on telecommunications service bills, and oftentimes the funds that are collected for these fees are diverted and used for other projects within the state. Funding the implementation of your particular NG9-1-1 system while keeping your legacy system up and running during this transition period can be a large capital expense to justify, but it's possible to coordinate. One way is to develop statewide 911 plans. Sometimes a coordinated deployment approach may be provide some cost savings opportunities. And we need to educate state lawmakers on the importance of these NG9-1-1 systems and funding them more quickly rather than less quickly. There are grant programs that are available. Some are available through DHS and other agencies. Salt Lake County, Utah was able to fund their pilot IP network and create a platform for NG9-1-1 primarily through a state grant. Another challenge to having fully operational NG9-1-1 system is the underlying technology, because it is different. The most effective NG9-1-1 systems are the ones that are consistent across agencies, which is part of why the plan for a nationwide public safety broadband network was created, that whole FirstNet. However, this has been a slow-moving process, and has still yet to be fully deployed. So PSAPs also face a challenge of supporting that legacy 911 system while implementing and training on the new NG9-1-1 system. This also can be tasking from both a cost and personnel perspective and needs adequate planning to make sure in the beginning stages of your NG9-1-1 project you're successful. So many government agencies are attempting to help solve the challenges around technology to allow more PSAPs to adopt next-gen technology. There's the FCC Task Force on Optimal PSAP Architecture. They were founded to establish key guidelines and best practices for architecture that will allow agencies to share data more easily. And NG9-1-1 now is a coalition of industry leaders focused on accelerating the adoption of NG9-1-1. Please take the time and check out those particular organizations. There's no doubt that the challenges in moving to NG9-1-1 can be daunting, but the risks in not moving are even higher. At APCO in 2015, the FCC Chairman Tom Wheeler urged PSAPs across the nation not to delay. He stated, "Let me be clear, just because the slow implementation of next generation 911 is understandable doesn't make it excusable. Today's fractured implementation of 911 and NG9-1-1 capabilities leaves Americans confused and at greater risk. Lives are at stake and we have to do better." So Chairman Wheeler announced that aggressive agenda for promoting NG9-1-1 adoption nationwide, calling for congressional action to assist municipalities. More resources and the best possible tools should be made available to you. The risks of waiting to adopt the new next-gen technology are high. So what are they? As we examined earlier, the majority of PSAPs are running on decade-old enhanced 911 technology that relies upon the billing address to provide caller location. This is particularly troubling. And you say, why is that troubling? Well, considering most households have discontinued use of their landlines and are relying solely on their cell phones. In fact, 90% of 911 calls today are made from cell phones. Consumers expect that because Facebook and Uber can find the location from their cell phone, 911 else should also be able to. But with enhanced 911 technology, dispatchers don't get that information as accurately as they could. In addition, 54% of the dispatchers believe that the location information provided from cell phones is regularly inaccurate. Many consumers assume that 911 call takers receive the same GPS location as their favorite social media app like Facebook or Instagram, when without NG9-1-1, PSAPs don't have the right technology. Instead, they receive location information based on the cell tower. And unfortunately, recently, stories have surfaced where a 911 caller used their cell phone. And it was routed to the 911 call center in a neighboring county because of the cell tower used to place the call. In some of these cases, even though the caller knew their exact location, the operator was unable to locate them and dispatch out the correct emergency services in a timely manner. We are a highly mobile society these days, and we expect to be able to interact with others at all times using any number of different devices. A simple phone call isn't enough anymore. People contacting 911 assume they can text, send a photo, video, and other data on various devices. But we know from earlier that only 5% of the PSAPs actually support text to 911 at this time. Our citizens are demanding change. More than 58,000 people recently signed petitions calling for Congress to pass legislation requiring emergency centers to update their systems to accommodate texting. When PSAPs can receive multiple kinds of messages, this gives callers better access in general In some situations, people may endanger themselves by speaking out loud, active shooter or some situation, and texting 911 is absolutely a safer option. Texting will also make it easier for callers with special needs, hearing impaired, and other speech impairments to reach 911 and effectively communicate. With the current technology, call takers get very limited information. We've sort of addressed that already. And limited knowledge of fast developing situations can contribute to miscalculations, not the best knowledge of the current situation, and can put lives at risk. The ability to receive photos, video, and text and other data enables dispatchers to make a more informed assessment and decision about a situation and pass along critical information to those first responders heading out to the scene. For example, a live video from inside a bank robbery could give officers strategically significant details about weapons or hostages, even the suspects. More ease in the exchange of information between PSAPs will help ensure responders are better informed and better prepared when they arrive at the scene, keeping them safer. In addition, more kinds of data, such as photos and video, assist with investigations and evidence gathering. A crucial detail, such as a license plate or suspect's location, could be captured by someone at the scene and passed along to police. Video of a crime in progress could be quickly sent to law enforcement, delivering valuable insight into the situation. More data also means it will be much easier for agencies to share information and ultimately work more seamlessly together. So how can your PSAP respond when it's overloaded with calls? Could a natural disaster or significant emergency event overwhelm your operations? During and immediately after Hurricane Katrina, 38 emergency call centers were so bombarded with calls they were unable to function, making a bad situation in a natural disaster even more difficult. 10 years later, the vast majority of emergency contact centers are still using the same data technology that doesn't allow them to coordinate well with other agencies. They are unable to transfer or reroute calls in a significant way to other call centers in an emergency or to share data in an efficient way. It's difficult. New technology will allow organizations to leverage resources and share information much more easily among themselves. So preparing for your NG9-1-1 technology migration. NG9-1-1 is here. We saw that there's some early adopters already on the map. The next step is to make it happen at your particular organization. As you prepare for NG9-1-1, here are some best practices we would like to share. We would suggest doing a little research on how your 911 services are funded. Are there grants available to help cover the initial costs of implementing a new system? We would say start a conversation with the stakeholders. Include stakeholders from multiple levels of your organization and state, and make sure we're educating our lawmakers on the importance of NG9-1-1. Look at the technology with a big picture view in mind. New technology will continue to be developed as NG9-1-1 is rolled out on a large scale. Make sure you look for a flexible solution that will grow with you and your organization. We need to consider cybersecurity needs. As NG9-1-1 rolls out on a large-scale level and we are more IP-based, cyber threats will become more and more frequent. PSAPs need to have a plan in place for cybersecurity as they handle sensitive information and larger quantities of data. Create a plan and consider your security needs. You may want to consider an organization that has capabilities and experience in security like JITC, which is what the DoD uses to make sure applications are secure before they run on their network. You should create formal guidelines for incidents as to what will happen if your PSAP does go down in emergency. Where will the calls be routed? And make sure that those guidelines are outlined clearly and part of the new system plan. And continued training of your dispatchers. Many dispatchers go to NINA and APCO to get additional training, but make sure those dispatchers that are on the front lines are trained to help the people in the incredible ways they do, and as they head into the future with additional technology, including text, photo, and video, you will continue to enhance their training so that they can continue to serve their constituents in the best way they can. In summary, the next generation 911 technology is available now, right? Implementation of this technology will happen in phases. It won't happen all at once, but we need to start planning and preparing and love to help. We need to educate the public and lawmakers on the importance of NG9-1-1 and what it really means to the constituents that we serve and the users of this wonderful 911 emergency number system. If you would like to visit Spok and see what we have to offer in the way of NG9-1-1, we will be at APCO August 14th through the 17th in Orlando, Florida at booth 1733. And we will be at the NINA APCO show in Colorado on October 6th. Please schedule an appointment and stop by our booth. So, time for questions.
All right. Thank you, Lee, so much for that insightful presentation. We will take some time now to answer your questions. It looks like we have had a couple submitted already. So if you do have a question, please submit it in the questions box, and Lee will answer as many as time allows. So Lee, our first question is, will my PSAP still be able to transfer calls to agencies that are not using an NG9-1-1 solution?
Paige, the answer is yes. Your agency still will be able to transfer calls to agencies that are not using an NG9-1-1 solution. Although it does become easier and more elegant if they are, you still can transfer those calls to legacy PSAPs.
Thank you. And another attendee has asked, if my PSAP is in an area served by an analog 911 network, should I hold off considering an NG9-1-1 solution?
My answer to that, Paige, would be no. We certainly would want to get an NG9-1-1 solution at least on the roadmap as soon as possible. Talking about the points earlier in the presentation where so many folks are using cell phones and other wireless mobile applications, we need to be able to find those, and geospatial routing is a very important part of NG9-1-1. We need to make sure that we are able to take those calls and identify where those people are more quickly rather than less quickly. So we definitely want to get started on that sooner rather than later.
Thank you. And another question just came in that kind of catches on the tail end of what you just said. This attendee has asked, I've noticed a trend of 911 calls from cell phones in my area. Will changing to an NG9-1-1 platform help with those cell phone callers?
Yes. We want to make sure that as we roll out the NG9-1-1 platforms, that we are working with the carriers to provide better location information and not tower-based location information. We want to get the information right from the phone and be able to geospatially put you on the map and then route the call to the closest PSAP. So we absolutely want to get the wireless call takers the highest priority.
All right, thank you so much. It looks like that is the end of our questions today, so we will conclude our webinar right there. If we were unable to get to your question, we'll be sure to follow up with you. And if you'd like to chat with the Spok representative on the topics that we've discussed today, you can do so using the link that's in the chat box. You can also continue the conversation with fellow attendees by using the hashtag SpokWebinar on Twitter. And follow us on Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook to get all of the latest news from Spok, as well as industry news and trends. Thank you all again for joining us. We hope that you found this webinar informative, and have a great day.